I'm Estella. I'll be your moderator for our Buzzy Books panel of 2024. And we'll go ahead and start with some introductions, starting all the way at the far end. We have Brittanie Black from Penguin Random House Audio, Maya Fenter from the Random House Group, Madison Furr from Random House Children's Books, Kaitlin Ketchum from 10 Speed Press, Matthew Sciarappa from the Knopf Doubleday Publishing Group, and Andrew Taets from Penguin Publishing Group. And we'll go ahead and get started with our swoon-worthy category.
All right, I get to go first. How exciting. So I'm going to be talking about Feybound. Hold on. Here we go. So Feybound by Sarah L. Arifi is a Fey fantasy romance, and I know that alone might be enough to sell some people, but in case if it's not, Feybound it's sapphic, it's spicy, it's also very smart. There's rich world building, there's powerful themes. It's the first book in a trilogy, and if you were ever reading a Fey romance and you're like, I wish these people weren't all white, Feybound's for you. It's very good. I blew through it. I usually get kind of intimidated by a fantasy series. I get a little bit intimidated by New World, but this one was so easy to pick up, so immersive, and I'm eagerly anticipating the second book.
I've been excited to talk about We Could Be Heroes since I first read it because I was like kicking my feet while I read it. It reduced me to like a little kid. It's just one of those rom-coms that are written like by queer people and for queer people. So it follows a drag queen and secondhand bookseller as like a Marvel-esque movie franchise comes through town. And by some stroke of luck, the main character Will runs into the movie star at the local drag bar where he performs. And he's like, trying to figure out if their sparks are real or imagined. They're real, obviously. And it's just kind of like this beautiful romp of a story. And there's like an NDA. It's very like, there's high stakes and it's tense, but it's also really heart-fluttering and cute. And it's really an encapsulation to me of like what a rom-com is supposed to be, because there's so many funny, light, romantic moments, but it also like touches a bit on history and like compet and the like complicated dynamics of just mixing your life with somebody who's very different from you. And it's also a little steamy. So if you like that, it's definitely there.
Cool. Next up, we have A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen, the author of the Bridge Kingdom series, which, quick shout out, we are republishing the Bridge Kingdom series with new covers and paperback. The first cover you can see on Danielle's Instagram. It's gorgeous. And we will also be publishing books 5 and 6 in the coming years. So very excited for that. Yes, yay indeed. So A Fate Inked in Blood is a Norse-inspired fantasy romance. It, again, steamy. Not everything I talk about will be steamy, but these first two are because it's swoon-worthy. And it's just intoxicating. You cannot put it down. There's also a lot of great like fantasy action and world building as well, in addition to the spice. And just a sneak peek, we will have some exciting news about book 2, the second book in the duology, soon. So you should follow us on social and follow Danielle, follow Del Rey Books, and we might just be revealing a cover soon. I don't know though. You'll have to find out.
I think you might know.
It does seem like you know. If you've been to our booth, then you have probably heard all of us talk about The Night Ends with Fire. But this, for me, really is like the romantasy book of this year. I read it like over the holiday break last year, and it like really gave me that feeling of when you were a kid and you were like hiding that you were still up reading from your parents, like under the covers with a little light, and you just couldn't stop turning the pages. It's a Mulan retelling, so the 3 kingdoms are at war, and Mei Lin is to be married off to a violent and ill-tempered man who reminds her of her opium-addicted father. And so, kind of fueled by ambition and desire to not live this life that she's been forced into, she enlists in the army in the name of her father. And there are late night training sessions. There's a sea dragon who visits her in visions and dreams. And it really is just kind of the adventure of a lifetime. She's such a smart and ambitious heroine. And I really like that KX Song played with the idea of like, if you're cosplaying as a man, what happens if like you start feeling some sparks with another man in the army? Like, I like that she really took that and ran with it. There is a little bit of a love triangle. There's some will they, won't they, but there's also just a really like epic and special fantasy twist that she added to this classic story. It really is just like my eyes are red, I have a headache, I'm so tired, I have work in the morning, but I can't stop reading type of book. And it's really gorge. If you get the first printing, it has sprayed edges and end papers and everything.
All right, I promise this panel is not just me and Andrew talking. It's just this first slide. But anyway, The 100 Loves of Juliet by Evelyn Skye is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, except Romeo is immortal and Juliet keeps getting reincarnated, but she doesn't know who Romeo is. She gets reincarnated as a different person. So yes, lots of yearning. It's such a quick read. I read this over a holiday break like a year ago or two, and I sped through it in 2 days. It's a great book slump crusher, great poolside read. It's very romantic. I don't want to spoil it, but they do have a happy ending. So if you're like, that sounds really depressing, that Juliet keeps dying, then don't worry, it's okay. But yeah, it takes place predominantly in Alaska. It's a really cool setting to be in. I mean, we're in beautiful San Diego, but the scenery in Alaska is beautiful as well. And yeah, and then also by Evelyn Skye, we have 1 year ago in Spain, which comes out on Tuesday. And similar to, thank you, similar to The 100 Loves of Juliet, this is another great vacation read, another great beach read. This is about a woman who has to woo her lover's soul back into his body when he's in a coma. So again, themes of second chance romance. It's very romantic, takes place in Spain. So very different than Alaska, but still a very dreamy little spot to be in. And yeah, you can pick this up on Tuesday. And the covers are gorgeous, so that helps.
And moving right along to fantasy.
All right, kind of an oddball book to kick off fantasy with, but The Dissonance is a bit of contemporary or urban fantasy with a bit of horror and just like a sprinkling of good 90s nostalgia. Kind of think Lev Grossman's The Magician's trilogy meets Stephen King's It, in which a cast of 3 devilish, absolutely atrocious high school students under the tutelage of an eccentric Professor March train in a secret system of magic known as the Dissonance. A magic system that feeds on negative emotions, think alienation, anger, pain. You know, I was a really well-adjusted teenager, but I hear that sometimes teens feel things like that. Totally. So this is actually a lot of fun. We've got some small-town dark academia. We have some spells, monsters, portals to alternate universes, time travel, friendship, and some surprising romance thrown in to top it off. This book is absolutely freaking bonkers, and there's just so much to revel in here.
Wow, I don't know how to follow that up, but I shall try. So The God and the Gumiho by Sophie Kim. He is a fallen god, and she is a notorious nine-tailed fox who is also immortal. And he's grumpy. He loves coffee, though. He has a soft spot for coffee, which, like, don't we all? And she is sunshiny. She's spunky. The banter in this is amazing. It's like a little rivals to lovers romance. They have to team up and solve a murder mystery together. So it's a little bit of murder mystery. It's very rom-com-y. If we have any K-drama fans out there, it reads exactly like an addicting K-drama. There is also a just one bed scene, and it had me giggling. It had me kicking my little feet, and it was just a delightful summer read, which you can pick up if you're in need of something like that.
You may know M.T. Anderson from his YA phenomenon Feed, or perhaps the Octavian Nothing series, but Nicked is an adult fiction debut. Again, kind of like a really oddball fantasy from me here. It's all based on a bizarre but true story from medieval Europe, where a dowdy monk and a debonair treasure hunter team up to steal the corpse of St. Nicholas, which is rumored to leak a sacred magical goo that can heal the sick. We love magical goo. Okay, so here you get so much. There is a high seas relic hunt. Pirates are involved. You get a heist of epic proportions, and perhaps most enticing of all, a slice of yummy gay romance between our 2 dissimilar adventurers.
Okay, Blood at the Root, I think, can really be summed up with one sentence. What if Harry Potter went to an HBCU in the South? Which is actually the tweet that author Ladarian Williams tweeted out. It went viral. He then took that, kind of turned it into a little short film, which also went viral. You can find it online. It is so fun. And from there, he kind of really took the idea and really wanted to develop it into a novel because he has a hunger for books featuring Black boys stepping into their power. He says in his author's note that, "I'd always heard that Black boys don't read. Is it that Black boys don't read, or that Black boys are just not interested in whatever is put in front of them?" So he definitely had the hunger to create something that would inspire Black boys and inspire the love of reading, and truly Blood at the Root does that, and it takes all of the fun magical tropes that everyone loves in fantasy. Now, The Mirror of the Beast by Alexandra Bracken is the sequel to the instant #1 New York Times bestseller Silver in the Bone. And with the dream of Avalon in ruins, Tamsin and her friends are all at the stand in the way of Lord Death's plans to unleash the horrors of Anwen. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing any of these wrong, Alexandra, I'm sorry. On the world of the living. As the wild hunt carves a bloody path across continents, Tamsin must gather allies, track down powerful artifacts, and traverse the new other lands in search of ways to stop him. What I think is really, really cool about this book is that Alexandra, actually pulled inspiration from a deep dive into her genealogy, where she found out that she has an ancestor that is the Nestorius squire Richard Cabell, who is a villainous man, who is said to be the inspiration for the Sherlock Holmes novel The Hounds of Bakersville, and has links to black dog folklore and traditions of the Wild Hunt, in which has connections to Arthurian legend. So with that, Mirror of the Beast is a fresh twist on timeless myths and spotlights Arthurian legends and Celtic mythology, but adds in feminist themes, expansive world building, and a steamy rivals to lovers romance, making it perfect for both fans of adult crossover YA, fairy tale, and fable-tinged favorites like Circe, A Court of Thorns and Roses, The Cruel Prince, and more. And just for fun, for everybody who wants to know, Ladarian has a signing right after this in autographing area table 3, and in our booth 1514 at 1:30, and Alex has a panel at 1:30 in room 10, and a signing to follow at 3 in AA06, and then we'll be signing in the PRH booth 1514 at 4:30.
The perfect
Sorry.
The perfect transition into adventure and fables. Excuse the title not changing.
Okay, so The Bright Sword is 600 pages, or like 650 pages. So I was really waiting to read it because it felt like a huge commitment, and then I started it and couldn't put it down. So I promise, do not be daunted by the length of this. It's an epic story that is totally worth reading. It's an Arthur reimagining, so the main character, Colum, goes through this really grueling, like weeks-long trip to make it to the Round Table to present himself to be accepted as a knight. And he finds out that his timing sucks because everyone's dead. So King Arthur's dead, all the typical heroes of the myths are dead. All that's left are like the lame side characters, and they're drunk and they're sad and they're like stumbling around, and the furniture's not like he expected. And he's like, what's going on? And this is not a spoiler, remember I told you it is 600 pages. And England is kind of cracking in the absence of the light that King Arthur shone, and these people are not up to par to like be doing any sort of enforcing or fighting. And they kind of test him a little bit, they kind of play with him, but he notices that there's kind of really a serious problem. The old gods are coming back, the fairies are coming back, there is some danger to the absence of power. And so Colum has to kind of rally this ragtag group and try to uphold the honor that King Arthur left. And I just think it's a really good retelling. It touches on religion and has diverse characters and has political angles that the first maybe didn't, while all still holding that really like classic feel of like a myth with swords and stones and old gods and all of that type of stuff. And I always like to judge books by how much fun I feel like the author had writing it. And you could tell that Lev Grossman was just like kind of having a blast on the page. There's like a lot of funny jokes and absurd situations, and then also really like epic fights and inspiring passages as well.
I love that. Fun is contagious in reading. Okay. You've probably heard of Willow Smith. So I don't think I need to introduce her, but what I will say is that her activism really shines through in Black Shield Maiden. If you are kind of tired of whitewashed fantasy novels, I feel like this is really the answer to that. This really shines a light on marginalized voices, histories of African people. It features a young Black female protagonist and a lot of characters who defy the gender binary, and also non-patriarchal conceptions of power, which is great. And a lot of these things I feel like are becoming more popular in fantasy, but still aren't quite to the level of what some people think of fantasy as a genre being. So I'm really glad this book exists. It's great, it's epic. I also, not to steal our audio colleague's thunder, but I believe Willow narrates this.
Read the whole book.
Yeah, so if you want to listen to the audiobook, Willow narrates it, and it's great. And yeah, this one's available at our booth as well.
Impossible Creatures is the first and enthralling new middle grade series that has been likened to some of the greatest children's fantasy series of all time, including His Dark Materials, Chronicles of Narnia, The Hobbit. So not only will you want to buy it for every child in your life, you're also going to want to read it with them. It is about a boy who discovers he is the descendant of a family of guardians to a secret world called the Archipelago, a collection of islands where all of the creatures of myth and legend are real and in danger. It has already been released in the UK, and it had an incredible release. It was an instant Sunday Times bestseller, a children's book of the week in the Times, the Independent, and the Daily Telegraph, and the recipient of the prestigious Waterstone Book of the Year award. So it actually publishes in the US on September 10th, but it's definitely not going to be one you want to miss.
So finally, I get to pitch to you a true-to-form high fantasy. It's obviously dangerous to compare anything to Game of Thrones. People tend to shut their ears. Obviously, that's an incredibly epic series. But in terms of political intrigue, scope and scale, backstabbing and blood, the thirst for power, Novola's got the goods. Think Game of Thrones meets The Godfather, a world inspired by Renaissance Italy, in which a young scion, Davico, from a ruling class family, the de Regulis, faces rebellion as he ascends to power. But in Novola, strange and ancient undercurrents lurk behind the glit, greed, and grandeur. For example, as pictured on this absolutely slay cover, a fossilized dragon's eye, a token of raw power held by the de Reguli family that seems to compel our main character, Davico, to act out his most desperate will. This is the first in a brand new high fantasy series, and I'm sorry in advance if you do read this, you'll be very angry at me because you will be desperate for the second book, which will be forthcoming.
All right, hello. I love that this is the first thing that I get to talk to you guys about because I could talk about His Dark Materials and Ruth Wilson endlessly. Last week, it was announced that she is re-recording every book in the trilogy of His Dark Materials. If you're not familiar with Ruth Wilson, one, you should look up her entire filmology because she's absolutely incredible. And two, she is known to fans of His Dark Materials as the actress who portrayed Mrs. Coulter in the phenomenal HBO Max adaptation. So very excited about this one myself. It's just Mrs. Coulter is one of the more memorable characters in the book series, and Ruth Wilson just steals all the scenes that she's in, which is saying something considering she spends a lot of them against James McAvoy. So highly recommend this series if you haven't gotten around to it. I actually read this myself as an adult a few years ago, and it was one of the more enjoyable reading experiences of my adult life. And then check out the TV adaptation, and then go back and listen to all of the audiobooks read by Ruth.
Plugging all of the different mediums.
You can never get enough of this story.
Now we have Adventures and Fables.
Adventure and Fables. Okay, so I have the distinct pleasure of getting to talk to you all today just about comics and graphic novels, which I hope there's like some comics and graphic novels fans in here. So starting with Nothing Special, which is like a consummate, amazing, all ages adventure story by creator Katie Cook. I don't know if folks are familiar with Katie Cook. I know she's a fan favorite. If you have not been to visit her in Artist Alley, please do. There will be a line, but it will be worth it. I'm actually wearing my Nothing Special lanyard. So Nothing Special is this is the first book of a series that started on Webtoon, and it is the story of two kind of not so human teenagers venturing into the magical world with their sidekick, who is possibly the best character in all of literature, with my apologies to my esteemed colleagues, the ghost of a radish, who is very like sassy. It is absolutely precious. So this is actually, it's really fun for all ages. Folks ask me all the time, like, is it appropriate for younger readers? There is a romance, but it's like a gentle hand-holding romance, spoiler alert. But this is just like a super fun romp for all ages. Book 2 comes out this fall. Book 3 will follow next year. Oh, and I'm going to keep talking. Great. My mother likes to say one diva, one mic, so I'm just going to keep talking. So Watership Down. I don't know, has anyone in here read the original novel, Watership Down? Yeah, I feel like it's one of the best-selling novels of the 20th century, so you know it is a really epic story about a group of rabbits on a search for home, essentially, when their home is going to be destroyed. This is a graphic novel adaptation. I am happy to report it won an Eisner Award last night. Thank you very much. We're very thrilled. I am not as happy to report that we are sold out of it at our booth, but you should order it online. We have it in both, offering it in both paperback and hardcover. It is an absolutely stunningly illustrated adaptation, as you can see from the cover. We actually worked really closely with the Richard Adams estate to create this book. It took 5 years for the author and adapter and artist to create this. Richard Adams actually originally came up with the story of these rabbits for his 2 daughters. He would tell it to them in the car. And they sort of, you know, his daughter Juliet, who is with us here at the con, said she bullied him into writing the novel when she was 7 years old because she was so obsessed with the story. And we worked really closely with them to create this very full and faithful adaptation of this very beloved novel. So you should check it out.
Yeah, and last on the slide, someone else who needs no introduction, Trevor Noah is writing his own fable. So he has, for some time, wanted to put together an illustrated book to appeal to all ages. Into the Uncut Grass comes out October 8th, and the reason why I'm talking to you about it is because he has also confirmed to read the audiobook. So definitely be sure to check this one out later this fall.
Nonfiction.
Oh, great, more comics, it's me. So I'm Advocate is a graphic memoir by Eddie Ahn, who is a contemporary creator. You might have seen him, he was signing at our booth, I think, yesterday. This is really the story of sort of the immigrant experience. Eddie is born in Texas to Korean parents who eventually he makes his way to California. He has a lot of, like many immigrant children, expectations on his shoulders for what it means to achieve the American dream and make the most of what his parents have sacrificed to give him. So he delights them by becoming a lawyer. He then maybe doesn't delight them as much by going into nonprofit. He becomes an environmental justice lawyer. He's, you know, really fascinating self-taught creator, young guy out there truly today, like fighting the good fight for environmental justice in California, which those of you who live here know is very needed with our, you know, worsening climate crisis and our wildfires. So this is really a very moving, powerful, gorgeously drawn graphic memoir that really wrestles with like themes of what does it mean to be a good citizen versus what does it mean to be a good son, you know, duty versus opportunity and following your dreams. Really just fantastic read. What do we have next? Totally different. Let's make bread. Woo. So, carbs, basically. I told Matthew I was going to say carbs, and so I did. So this is actually a cookbook that's a comic book, and it's all about baking bread. So Ken Forkish, I don't know if we have any bread bakers in here, but Ken Forkish started a bakery in Portland, Oregon called Ken's Artisan Breads. He wrote a book called Flour, Water, Salt, Yeast, which actually hit the New York Times bestseller list like 5 to 10 years after it came out during the pandemic when everybody was baking bread. A real comeback kid story. So he is like an expert, incredible baker. Sarah Beacon is an expert, incredible comics creator. Some of you might know her work. So this is like a totally illustrated guide to making basic breads. If you are a visual learner, if you want to bake breads with kids, younger people, this is just a really great way to get started. It's unlike a classic cookbook where there's like a finished photo of a beautiful loaf of bread, and it's like, here's this long narrative description of how to make it. It sort of like really breaks it down into little bites, haha, and really shows, and like it's just kind of laced with like fun little moments, like little moments of humor. So it's a great self-purchase. It's a great gift if you know any bakers or anyone who's trying to become a baker. Maybe they'll give you a loaf of bread if you give them this book. And then super different, because I like to just be really diverse in my tastes, is the Black Panther Party. This is an Eisner Award winner from a few years ago. That is a serious nonfiction history of the radical Black Panther Party, which most of you are probably familiar with. I will say this is a really important graphic book. It's very powerful. If anyone is interested in progressive history, I really recommend it. I think, especially in our current, like, very charged political moment, we tend to really whitewash that, mid-century America, the civil rights movement, and it's all about love, and it's all about, peace, and it's all about, nonviolence, and like, that's really not the whole story, right? There was really like a lot of people doing very radical work, and of course the Panthers were a group that took a lot of heat. They were controversial, but the story is really fascinating. It's really powerful. It really gets to the heart of what they were going for with their very radical politics, which is essentially like housing, food security, education for children, safety for Black folks. And their methods have been widely criticized, but it's a really powerful story that I really recommend reading, especially if you have an interest in history or radical politics.
Horror.
Okay, I'm so excited to kick this off. We are not giggling and kicking our feet anymore. Natural Beauty is one of those books that I read that I didn't know I needed in my life until I read it, and then it became an instant fave. It's kind of like Rouge by Mona Awad meets The Girls by Emma Cline. It follows a piano prodigy who is the top at her music conservatory, and after an injury, she drops out and pursues a job at a high-end beauty store called Holistic. And Holistic is known for creams and tinctures and procedures that radically change your appearance and make you ethereally beautiful. And so she starts as just kind of a person on the floor doing sales, but as she gets drawn further and further into the deeper web of this company, she finds out that there is a very dark world underneath the products that they're selling, and she has an entanglement with the niece of the owner. She's really getting up to a lot of crazy things in this book, but it's a really fun fever dream of a story that kind of dares to go there. And I'm not going to say that I don't know anything, but there is something I can't talk about that's coming from this author next that is equally as amazing, and I think that she is a really amazing, inventive author to watch.
So Nicola Yoon might be a name that sounds incredibly familiar from her YA hits Everything, Everything, and The Sun Is Also a Star. But this is an adult fiction debut, nothing like those sweet and warm stories. One of Our Kind is a dystopian horror, a deeply unsettling work of satire set in an all-Black gated community, Liberty, California. New to Liberty are Jasmine and King Williams, and while King settles in immediately, embracing Liberty's ethos, including the dubious wellness spa that sits at the top of the hill, Jasmine struggles to find her place. Liberty's disengagement from the outside world, its residents' focus on booking spa treatments and ignoring the world's troubles, instead of trying to help others, sits at odds with her. This tense setup unveils a Stepford Wives-inspired thriller, a challenging read that asks big questions about social activism and the nature of freedom. Jumping from that to the visual stylings of Final Cut, I do have a graphic novel on my list as well.
Yay!
This is a new graphic novel from horror legend Charles Burns. Final Cut's a freaky little book. It is a horror built on the premise of an artist's ambition and obsession. What is the cost when you push the boundaries of creativity? It follows Brian, who as a child would make sci-fi films in his backyard, convincing his friends to star as victims of grisly murders, like putting makeup on them, lipstick all over their faces, it's blood, Years later, still trying to make it as a filmmaker, he's now investing his talents in a new gruesome project. However, his obsession with one of his actresses on set causes a psychological blurring of fact and fiction, resulting in a very surreal reading experience. Simply put, to read a Charles Burns graphic novel is just to let your brain melt a little bit.
House of Hunger is a book that if you're going to read it, you need to just commit to the weird. You just need to kind of be like, it's getting weird and I'm joining it. It follows Marion, who gets drawn into the upper echelons of a society where the rich and the luxurious feed on the blood of those who serve them. So she gets drawn in as a blood maiden, and it seems like an okay job until the countess of this hedonistic court takes a special interest in her, and then she sort of gets pulled into this game of cat and mouse where she learns there is much more going on here, and she has to navigate this very complicated world of lies and sadism to stay alive. So it is very spooky, but it's really an amazing story, and Alexis Henderson has a Dark Academia book coming out in September, and I really feel like this is the year of Alexis Henderson. So read this now so you can be ready for an Academy of Liars on September. We are sold out at the booth, but you can get it online.
And now science fiction.
All right, so Brittanie and I are going to kind of tag team this one. So the Book of Elsewhere is the product of the internet's boyfriends, his ideas, plus one of the greatest science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction writers, probably, maybe of all time. That might be controversial, but So the Book of Elsewhere is set in the Berserker comics universe, if anyone's familiar with that, but you don't need to have a background in that to read this book. It's really for anyone who is interested. And the cover that you're seeing on the screen over there is our con exclusive edition that is pre-signed by China and Keanu. We get a lot of people at our booth really excited for Keanu's signature, obviously, but we also get a ton of people who are like, did China sign this? Like a bunch of nerds like us who just want China Mayfield's signature, which is great to see. But the con exclusive has a cover. The red is foiled. It has black sprayed edges. It has illustrated end papers. And the case under the dust jacket has some blue foiling designs as well. And this is exclusive to San Diego Comic-Con, and the editions, we do have limited stock. So stop by our booth to claim your copy, and yeah, I'll turn it over to Brittanie.
On the audio side, I am happy to share, if you are not already aware, that the full cast includes Keanu Reeves himself, who we got to read the prologue. It's a very exciting way to start out this audio experience, but the rest of the cast is phenomenal as well. China read on this audiobook production likewise, and then we also have Lily Robb and Dario Naharis, which is not actually his real name, but I can pronounce his Game of Thrones character better than his real name. So highly recommend checking this out. It's just a full cast experience, and definitely one, to hear Keanu read these words is really exciting, and I highly recommend this as well.
Storm, A Dawn of a Goddess by Tiffany D. Jackson is not a comic, but comic adjacent, I guess. If you can't tell by the cover, it is a Storm origin story from X-Men. Yes, it follows her life on the streets of Cairo as a young girl, and then through her journey of trying to find her ancestors in Africa. And it's written by Tiffany D. Jackson, who is the New York Times bestselling author of Grown, Monday's Not Coming, Allegedly, White Smoke, The Weight of Blood, and more. And with Storm, she's actually doing something she's never done before. She's stepping into the world of speculative fiction. So this was definitely a passion project for her, and she's a huge Storm fan herself, and she really, really loved doing it. Highly recommend. It's phenomenal. There may or may not be an adorable teenage romance between Storm and our beloved T'Challa. But if you are a massive Marvel fan, you know that there definitely is.
All right, Earthlight is the big tour de force that we have going on at San Diego Comic-Con from Penguin Random House Audio this year. It is an audiobook original, which means that there is not a coinciding print edition of this story. So you can only listen to the story in the audio form, and it was designed specifically for that. So it's basically like an audio drama, which incorporates soundscapes, music, and it's just an incredibly immersive experience. The author who we got to do this is none other than J. Michael Straczynski, who you might know as the creator of Babylon 5, Sense8. He is also very familiar with the Comic-Con world. He's written quite a few runs of Captain America and Wonder Woman, and he's just, his career is varied and all across the board. And we have the con exclusive edition, which is available in our booth. And with that edition, it's a playable copy. It's all downloaded on like a little device that looks like it's from the 80s, which fits because this is like Top Gun in space. So you can just really soak up all the nostalgia. And then the other thing that comes in the con exclusive is it comes with a like bonus booklet which includes a exclusive letter from the author. We have a couple script pages in there for you to see how it went from like page to listen. And we have the full cast as well, because this is also a full cast experience. So it's just such a fun summer listen. It's like the audiobook blockbuster experience that you're looking for. And he's doing a signing in our booth later today at 6 o'clock. So he will be signing the booklet, because that's why you make a physical audiobook thing these days in 2024. And then after the signing at 8 o'clock, we are doing a behind the scenes, like how you make an audiobook original production panel, which is just further down the hall. And Joe will be there along with members of the cast. They might do a little like preview of what you will find if you listen to the audiobook. And then wrapping up this slide, we have Tempest Breaker, which is an audio first. Sorry, I'm getting into like, you know, the inside baseball lingo here, but that means that you can only get the audiobook for a certain amount of time. There is a print copy, but it's going to be coming much later, because if you have not listened to any of our Star Wars audiobooks, they are very similar to Earthlight in that they're a completely immersive experience. They have all of the Star Wars like sound effects up into like how it sounds when a door opens in Star Wars, which is a very particular thing in Star Wars. And we also have all the music, John Williams' lovely score, which just makes these dramas so much more sweeping and moving. And so for Tempest Breaker, this is an audio original, audio first. So it's the audio drama feel. And this is the follow-up to Tempest Runner, which is set in the High Republic universe. And this will be coming out in December. So make sure you check this out before you can listen or read to the print copy next year.
And now looking ahead.
Brittanie said Sense8 like 2 books ago, and I'm still like unfocused about how we were just robbed of that show, but that's a different conversation. Does anyone here already know about Dungeon Crawler, Carl? Okay. Yay! I've tried to pitch this to a bunch of people, and everybody so far has been like, we already know. So I'm excited to tell you about it. This book is self-published, but it is in print for the first time in August. And if we have any gamers in here, this is lit RPG. So it's like essentially a role-playing game as a book. So the main character lives in Seattle, and it's an unseasonably cold night, and he is chasing his girlfriend's cat who escaped outside. And he watches as the city just is suddenly leveled before him. And a voice comes down from the sky and says that the earth has been mined for resources and there is very little left. And anybody who lived through that either can try to stay and survive off of what few minerals and resources still exist, or they can enter the glowing doors that are kind of scattered throughout the globe and join a dungeon. So once they enter, they become video game characters with health stats based off of their like physical bodies before they were in the video game. And they have to try to get to level 18, which very few people have managed to, in which case you have gotten out of the dungeon and you win. And so this is a really epic saga of the main character becoming a video game character and trying to get to the 18th level of the dungeon. There's a diva cat who also has like a full role in this book. There's zombies, there's health bars and inventories and mentors and training people. There's like, it really is as if you are playing a video game, except you're not the one doing the controls. Matt Dinneman is. But it's a really inventive new form. It's really fun. It's really page-turning. I highly recommend it. And every book subsequently that has already been self-published is coming out like 1 month after. So if you like it, excitingly for you, you can get all the ones in print as they come out pretty quickly.
That's great. Old Wounds follows 2 transgender teens on a trip to get the medical care that one of them needs, but they find themselves stranded in the middle of the woods where the locals are looking for a sacrifice for the monster that lives there. According to them, the sun won't come up until the monster eats a girl. And so when Aaron and Max show up, the locals believe they found the perfect candidate. The irony of the situation is almost too much to fathom. They don't know Aaron and Max's secrets, which could be a death sentence on a good day, but the monster that lives in their woods has never faced a prey that have had to already fight for their lives. This is a thought-provoking debut novel and the perfect conversation starter about gender identity and what it means to exist as a trans person in America. And it's perfect for fans of Aidan Thomas's Cemetery Boys, Andrew Joseph White's Hell Followed With Us, and readers searching for more queer and trans books in YA. Oh, still me. The 13th Child by New York Times bestselling author Aaron A. Craig is a fresh take on a little-known Grimm's Brothers fairy tale, Godfather Death, about a girl, Hazel Treppas, who is gifted the ability to instantly deduce the exact cure that anybody might need. But with every gift comes a price, and her price is that she can see when somebody is going to die and is tasked with relieving their suffering. She is haunted by those that she has killed and is run into the royal court where she has to face the biggest question yet. The king has been marked for death. Does she save him? Does she end his pain and suffering? So very, very great book by author Aaron A. Craig, a beautifully creepy and romantic YA fantasy with adult crossover appeal. It is perfect for fans of books by V. Schwab, Aaron's previous books, which include House of Salt and Sorrow, Small Favor, House of Roots and Ruin, and truly just really great dark cottagecore read, like nothing you've ever seen before.
Dark cottagecore.
Yeah.
That sounds really fabulous. Fabulous.
It's kind of an oxymoron, but it works perfectly. Yep.
So I'm really excited to tell you about Big Jim and the White Boy. This is like one of my favorite books I've ever worked on. This is a graphic novel retelling of Huckleberry Finn that asks the question, what if Jim was the hero of the story? If you've read Percival Everett's James, this is an incredible companion piece to that, really different story. But not only is this sort of like the flip the script retelling of an American classic, it's like a kick-ass adventure story and a multi-generational family epic. So when Jim escapes from slavery, you know, the journey that he and Huck go on takes them into like Old West standoff, stops on the Underground Railroad, you know, sneaking through Confederate war camps, like just a really cool journey through the South and Midwest in the 1860s. We fast forward at a certain point, and the story kind of jumps back and forth in time to the 1930s, when Huck and Jim are old men, basically, and they're sort of like the Statler and Waldorf vibes, where they're just like these bickering old guys on a porch, like talking to their descendants, because there may or may not be a family connection between them that they may or may not be aware of. So sort of telling the stories of their epic tales to their descendants, and then jumping forward even farther into the future, Jim's descendants in the 1980s and then in the 2020s. So it's really this like sweeping, incredibly ambitious piece of storytelling. It's actually by the team, David F. Walker and Marcus Kwame Anderson, who did the Black Panther Party graphic novel. That was nonfiction, this is fiction. They're really bringing something super special to the story. I've read it so many times because I edited it, and I'm like not joking, like tears and snot, like every single time. I was like verklempt. So just cannot recommend it enough. It comes out in October.
Cool. I'm here to talk about Blood Over Brighthaven by Emma Wang. This is a dark academia about the first female mage to attend a very prestigious magic school. So with that, there's a lot of obviously like cool magic school vibes, which we all love, but also themes of intersectional feminism. It critiques colonialism and capitalism, and it's an amazing masterpiece. If you've heard of it before, if the title sounds familiar. This was previously self-published, but we were super excited to bring it to a wider audience. And with that, the first edition of this book that comes out in October will have red sprayed edges, illustrated end papers. It'll be a map, I think, on the end papers, and an illustration on the inside as well of one of the items in the book. So you don't want to miss that. You can go ahead and pre-order it. I will also say there's a quote from the book that we at the Del Rey team love, and that is truth over delusion. So if you come over to the booth and tell us that, something might happen. I don't know. But we just love that quote. So yeah, coming out in October, perfect spooky season read. And yeah.
Okay, to finish things up, let's talk about literary legend and icon and notable lover of cats, jazz, and spaghetti, Haruki Murakami. Translated by Philip Gabriel, The City and Its Uncertain Walls is a new quintessentially Murakami novel of dreamscapes and libraries, faceless clocks, and unicorn skulls. Here he dips back into the town he set out in his novel Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World, one where shadows become untethered from our bodies and transport across torqued landscapes through warped portals. It's never easy to explain a Murakami novel, but this book is just as enigmatic, whimsical, treacherous, bold, syncopated, and brainy as ever.
And that wraps up our books. I believe we don't have time for questions.
But come down to our booth and talk to us about books. We're at
Yes.
booth 1514, 1515.
Correct. And please, if you did not get one of these slips with all of the titles on it, get one on your way out. And thank you all so much for coming. Enjoy your con.